How to write like Taylor Swift. I know there are about to be 100,000 questions in your head from the jump, which are, why would I want to write like somebody else? Why do I want to write like Taylor Swift? Why is this necessary? I don't know, you clicked on the video, no. There's a beautiful quote that says, most people are not themselves, there's other people, or most people are other people. I think it's by Oscar Wilde. It's a really, really interesting quote, because a lot of what we think is us copying. And before we get fully into it, I'm a poet. I've always written what I thought. I've never followed like specific rules. I don't have like a specific rhyme pattern or whatever else that I like. I like to write just what I feel. But this is also what I'm good at. This is the thing. Arguably the only thing I'm good at. And that's why it comes easy to me, and that's why I enjoy it. I've also done it since I was like 10 years old, basically since I learned the English language. And now I'm 22, so I've done it for 12 years as well. This is just what I'm good at. But you might not. You might not be good at it. Not because you can never be good at it. Maybe it's not your thing. Maybe it is a thing you find interesting, but you've not. There's been a bridge, but you've never been able to take it because the bridge kind of seems scary to writing. And I think sometimes you need rules so you can break them. You're like, what? You need religion so you can disagree. Well, you're like, what the fuck is she on? Sometimes you need things to exist so you know you don't like their existence. There's a beautiful saying as well. I love sayings, honestly, which is, if you don't know the rules, you're not breaking the rules, you're just not playing well. And if you don't write often, and you don't like your writing or whatever else, yes, you can knock your head against the wall and do the same thing 1,000 more times, or you can try out different clothes. Last saying, and then we will actually get into it. A baby, this was a TikTok I watched ages ago. A baby needs to learn how to crawl and then to walk. Even if that baby ends up being a runner, the baby still has to learn how to crawl and walk. Even if most babies don't end up being marathon runners, they just need to learn how to walk. And walking is useful and important enough. Arguably way more useful and important than running. Not everyone needs to be an artist, but everybody needs art. Let's get into it. I also have an art course, so if you do want to take it more seriously, do it more often, go check out the art course. It's a playlist on this channel, but let's get into it. What makes Taylor Swift writing her? You'll have 1,000 English teachers that can teach you her much better. What metaphors does she use? What kind of blah 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 does she use? All of these fancy terms, but I'm gonna give you the essence, the soul of it. You need both. I'm just gonna give you what I got. So, what is the soul of her writing? We can definitely, if you have a request for a specific album and the soul of that album, please let me know, then we can do that as well. Leave it in the comments. But we're gonna do overall her entire discography. There we go. So, what is it? Selfish? Childish? Old? Like, what's a nice way to describe someone? I'm not describing her, I'm describing her writing. And we're gonna get into all of it. Selfish. Why selfish? Why selfish? She rarely ever acknowledges somebody else's point of view. Rarely ever. If at all. And if she acknowledges someone else's point of view, it is because it's either so blatantly obvious and she misses them, and so she has to acknowledge that it was her fault, or I'm not talking about her character, I'm talking about her writing, okay? For you Swifties in the comments, get all. I think she seems great. We're talking about writing. or she's writing characters and then she acknowledges different sides. But at large, you don't think of Taylor Swift as the person who's like pro, contra. You think, I think, you feel, I feel. No, it's like I feel, and then I feel again, and how dare you make me feel a third thing in a 24-hour period? Fuck you. And she says it much nicer and wrapped around in other things, but that is the essence of it. It is her perspective, it is her feelings. And 90% of art, if not 100, I would say 95% of art is selfish. I've said this before. Selfish people make great art. Selfish people are not great though. So this is a balance you need to strike with life and art, which is, isn't that life? Isn't that the constant struggle? But within art, your selfishness can kind of loom, especially if you want to write like Taylor Swift. Consider your point of view. Consider what you think. Let yourself be misunderstanding somebody. She's not fact checking. She's sometimes quoting and then interpreting it wrong or with her perspective or what could be wrong. We don't know. We're not like interviewing both sides like, hello. So do you feel like you were represented correctly in her song? No. But if someone had a Taylor Swift song written about them, you would not be surprised if they're like, this is not fully, mostly how it happened. Because there is a bias, and she lets the bias exist. She lets the bias exist. And there's other songwriters that do that less. Joshua Bassett had a couple songs that were acknowledging both sides much better than Taylor Swift does. A, because probably of the scandal around it, and maybe that's just also more his writing style. If you want me to get into his writing style, let me know. If you have any other songwriters you want to write like. And this doesn't have to be songs. It can be journaling. It can be writing out your emotions. It can be just getting things out of your system. You need art, because art is the thing that turns emotions into something productive without denying the emotion existing. But yeah, so that's something she does all the time. It is my point of view. It is my pain. It is you doing it wrong most of the time. It can veer into a victim narrative. It usually doesn't, but it can veer into that. But most artists can veer into a victim narrative. We can veer into any narrative we want because we write it ourselves. And so that is the first one, selfish. So how can you portray that in your writing? Acknowledge only your side. If you're journaling, if you're writing a poem, if you're doing this, if you're doing that, wherever your writing ends up, if you're writing for an article, for a newspaper, for this, for that, for there, for here, for everywhere, if you're writing, acknowledge your side. Are you giving a review of that ballet and you hated it? Write about the fact that you hated it and it was horrible. A, because I think people can connect and understand the truth much better than a fanciful lie, for the most part. People sometimes you can't even tell something's a lie, but they can tell it's not the truth. You know what I mean? Also, let's say that, like, let's step outside of the art to observe the art. Let's say the ballet, example, the ballet was really horrible, and you're like, I don't want to write a bad review because I'm scared I'm going to hurt the ballerina's ego. Don't you think it's better she knows so she can get better? I'm not saying you should write a hate letter. But again, Taylor Swift never writes songs where you're like, this is like a hate comment. No, this is like a evaluation of her feelings within this person. All you'll ever have is your own perspective anyways. And I think acknowledging your biases is much better than pretending you have none at all. Same with journaling. Don't try to understand every other person's side. Just try to understand your own side and where you were hurt and where you might misunderstand, but from your understanding. Selfish. Selfish, selfish. That was it. So what do we go into next? Childish. Taylor Swift is childish. Again, we're talking about her writing. There is an amount of childishness one needs to be able to be so sad. You're like, what? You need to be childish to be sad? Yes, you also need to be childish to be happy. Not naive, childish. There is an element of, you know what? How? What? If you've ever been around a child and you were not a child anymore, if you babysitted or just seen children around, my God, they're amazed by everything. Everything. A chair that spins. Are you what? A spinning chair? And it's like they're on a magic ride. And then if adults do that, people are like, immature, childish, weirdo. But that magic of amazement at the world is also the magic that can then dimmer it. Contrast is needed in life and in art and in your mind and in your emotions. If you cannot feel happy, you cannot feel sad. If you cannot feel sad, you cannot feel happy. These emotions will end up being shallow because they're based on nothing. If they're not based on each other, they're based on nothing. And so to be really sad and to be selfish in the writing and to pursue what you feel, you need to feel something first. If you were not in love, you cannot be heartbroken. If you were not hopeful, you cannot lose your hope. If you didn't believe in something, you cannot stop believing in something. And that's what most people don't do now. People grow up so fast. Not just the fact that 12-year-olds look like 20-year-olds with the amount of makeup they put on. It's insane. Put down the makeup, my kid. Chill out. You've got the rest of your life to have to put this stuff on your face. It's gonna be fine. Not to say that I didn't put on makeup, but not at 12. 13 maybe, but I didn't to the extent that kids do nowadays. I know I sound old. I'm 22, but I feel old. I've always felt old. Not in the sense of like old, but old soul, whatever. You're not here to hear about my life. If you are though, check out my 2 poetry books in the description. Getting back to it. You need to feel selfish, and you need to feel happy, and you need to be present. That is one of the reasons love is the biggest theme in art. Because love is selfish, it needs presence, and it needs childishness. You're like, what? What do you mean selfish? Like transactional? No, not like transactional. You're on the wrong side of the internet if you think that. But it is selfish in the sense of how you feel. Very few times do you see people who love each other argue and they're like, I understand your side, but my side. And yes, of course, that's the healthy way. But most people, they're like, I understand my side. And I understand that I'm offended and I don't understand why you felt the need to say this. That's more what you see, not in exactly this way said, but that's way more what they see because they're sensitive, because they feel something. It is childish because it is presence. Presence. That's why love and art go together. Love is magical, and there's 1,000 reasons why we love love and why art, overarchingly, majority is about love. But one of the reasons is because love warrants presence. If someone doesn't listen to you, you don't feel loved. If someone doesn't know you, you don't feel loved. If someone doesn't remember the things you say, you don't feel loved. If someone you don't feel loved. A lot of the disappearing of the feeling of love is lack of presence. So childishness. How can you start doing this? So let's say you start journaling and you start journaling from your point of view and you're like, okay, but how do I become childish? 15 minutes of silence. Walking around. And if you have to force yourself to look at things and be amazed. Force. The flower is pretty. Oh, the flower is pretty. You have to force yourself. But don't stop dimming it. Stop being at such a standstill. If a heart rate is at a standstill, it's dead. If you are at a standstill, you feel dead. And that's why you need so much outside stimulation. That's why you're doom scrolling. Of course you're doom scrolling. You get a dopamine hit with every scroll. Never considering the fact that you might want to get a dopamine hit from flowers and a stranger and a laugh and a dog and a sunshine for 2 seconds and this and that and there. Life could be like scrolling, but you decided scrolling to be life. And then old. It has nothing to do with her age. Taylor Swift, I would say, is an old soul. I would say most writers are old souls. Because there's something old about writing. But also, especially with Taylor Swift, the words she uses are old. There's a lot of old words. You can see that she read a lot of old texts. You can see that she read Shakespeare. You can see her influences, bits and pieces of it. And you can see that there's a fascination with the time before. in the clothes she wears in music videos, and the things she talks about, and the metaphors she uses, and in her word choice. You don't not need to be old. You just need fascination with the time. You could be fascinated with the present, but you might want to put it in the context of the past or the future. You might want a different time than just now, which is ironic because I just said be more present. But without context, what is the present? Without contrast, what is anything? Without black, what is white? Without happy, what is sad? Without this, what is that? So, I hope this helped. I hope you will actually do this. And if you do, let me know. If you're going to write a poem and you want to leave it in the comments, feel free to. And I hope you liked it. And if you have, again, a specific request for a singer or an album, let me know how to write like them and their essence and soul and what my opinion is. And if you enjoyed this and you think I might actually be your new favorite poet, go check out in the description my 2 poetry books.